Hey guys, Dan here with this week's TV news and reviews. Welcome to the show. This week we've got a little bit of everything on the review side, sort of a hodgepodge of a bunch of different types of shows. We've got the animated adult comedy Bless The Harts, which is on Sunday nights on Fox. We've got Batwoman, which is the latest addition to the CW Arrowverse, and part of the whole DC Comics thing. We've got Evil, which is a science fiction drama type show on CBS. And then we've got a couple of real light things. Kids Say The Darndest Things, the reboot of that with Tiffany Haddish as the host. And a new game show syndicated for Fox stations across the country with Meredith Vieira as the host called 25 Words or Less. We're going to review all of that, sort of run the gamut of all types of different shows. And we also have a few things in the news department to talk about. Last week we didn't do any news. I was a little bit under the weather, and also we had 6 reviews to do, so we just kind of launched right into those. But there were a few things that caught my eye over the last few days on the news side of things for TV, so I wanted to talk about those up front here. And the first one is the Sesame Street news about having a Muppet with an opioid-addicted, I think it's mother, but parent anyway, that they are going to tackle. So this was just announced over the last couple of days, I guess. But basically, these are going to be online-only segments of Sesame Street. And it's going to be, Carly is the name of the Muppet. She's this, like, green and yellow kind of girl, and she is a buddy of Elmo's. And it is her mother, yeah, that's battling this pill addiction. And so I don't really know, first of all, how Sesame Street is even consumed these days, because it is in its 50th year on television, but the new episodes are airing on HBO first, and then going to PBS. I think the window was something like 9 months later. This is from what I remember reading about it like a year ago. I'm not actually sure if the new season has premiered yet on HBO or not. I know there was going to be about a 1.5-year gap where there was going to be no new episodes, which is fine, because it's not like Sesame Street is timely. I mean, a lot of the clips I was watching in the 80s growing up on Sesame Street was from the original, early 70s, late 60s type of segments. So it's not like, other than maybe the guest stars coming on with their parody songs. But even that, it's like, if you have a superstar on that's playing one of their big hits, that's kind of timeless anyway. So I don't know how people consume Sesame Street these days anyway. I assume PBS is just still airing, all the reruns from the last few years. I think this is awesome. I think this is so cool. I sort of wish it wasn't just from the online version, because, I mean, ideally, the little kids watching Sesame Street can't probably go online and look for it themselves. And I don't know that an opioid-addicted parent is going to say, oh, here, little Johnny, watch this segment about my addiction and you'll learn something. I don't know if that's necessarily what's going to happen. So I have mixed feelings about it being an online-only segment of the show. But because of the way kids get information now, and because of the way HBO has sort of taken control of the original episodes of Sesame Street, I imagine a lot of Sesame Street watching is done online on their YouTube channel, on probably their own app or website or something. But there was a startling fact here in the article I read, that 5.7 million children under the age of 11 live in a household with a parent or two parents of substance addiction. So, I think it is so cool that they're doing this. Now, for me, I grew up in the era of Mr. Hooper, who, anybody old enough watching this will know who Mr. Hooper is. He was the original shopkeeper on Sesame Street, and the actor that played him was elderly, and he died in, I'm not sure what year, early 80s, maybe 83, somewhere around there. And they, instead of recasting him, decided, you know what, let's have this character die on the show, and we can sort of explain death to children in that way. And this is something that Mr. Rogers had employed. He employed it with the Challenger explosion a couple of years later. He employed it with 9/11. And I remember there was something that sort of came up when Jim Henson died, that they were debating on whether or not to retire the Ernie character and have him, die of AIDS or something like that. I think these were some rumors. Obviously Ernie is still on the show, so they didn't do that. But but Jim Henson was so synonymous with Ernie, they weren't sure if they wanted to continue with the character. I'm glad they did, because I've always loved Ernie and Bert. But, I learned really about death from that Mr. Hooper segment when they had, they didn't have the funeral on the show, but they talked about it in a way that made it easy for me to understand as a kid. I had not been through that yet. I didn't have any family members that had passed at that point while I was alive. My grandfather died before I was born, but still I got it from Sesame Street. So I think this is awesome. I applaud their decision to do this. I haven't heard of them getting a whole lot of pushback from it yet, but there may be groups that are like, oh, our children can't handle that, they're too sensitive, and da 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 da. Dude, come on. I don't really get political on my review shows, but this is life. I learned about death from Sesame Street, and I think kids with family members who are addicted to substances or abusing them, I think this would be great for them to understand what's happening, So kudos to them. I don't know when these segments are going to be appearing. It just sort of was announced yesterday, but yeah, I guess they're going to be on the YouTube page or something, but not on the main show. Now, I don't know if that particular Muppet will be on the main show. They just won't be talking about the addiction or what. But, kids love Elmo and all of his little buddies and Elmo's World and all of that stuff. So I think having her be attached in that way to Elmo, being good friends, is awesome, because she can sort of explain it to him and thus explain it to the kids. So I think that's so cool. The next thing I want to talk about is the streaming wars. We sort of tackled this a few weeks ago when Disney Plus and NBC's Peacock app and then Apple Plus, all sort of revealed some of the details about their streaming services, be it price points or content or what have you. So the article I read today is very interesting and something I didn't quite expect, but there was a survey done that roughly 75% of all Netflix users do not, in the survey anyway, do not plan on getting Disney Plus, at least not immediately. And I thought that was very interesting because, listen, I think people are kind of sick of, having to pay for different streaming services. I'm sick of it, and I only pay for, I think, 3 of them. And I don't count Amazon Prime as paying for one, because I would pay for Amazon Prime anyway to get the free shipping. So, that to me I don't really count as a streaming, site, even though it is, but that's, I would buy it regardless. So Netflix and Hulu for sure, and then I do have access to CBS All Access. I do not pay for it. And so maybe that's it. Maybe I just pay for those 3, Amazon, Hulu, and Netflix. But I've already bought Disney Plus, so I guess maybe you can count that in there. I was part of their Labor Day sale or whatever, where you got a third off if you bought 3 years at once. So I'm all in on Disney Plus. I'm definitely doing that. But what I thought that was the most interesting about that article is that, it pointed out that Disney Plus is like half the price of Netflix, maybe a little more than half. And then Apple Plus is $5 a month. I don't think NBC has released figures yet on how much Peacock is going to be, but I think we can probably imagine that it'll be in that like $7 or $8 price range, which is where Hulu is and which is where Disney Plus is going to be. The rep for Disney Plus didn't seem, surprised necessarily by that statistic. That roughly 3/4 of all Netflix users are not planning on going the Disney Plus route. I think that tune might change as all the Disney stuff gets taken off of Netflix, because that's the whole point, is that Disney Plus is going to have their own, streaming stuff, so they're taking all their stuff on Netflix very soon, which includes, all the Marvel movies and Star Wars and Pixar and all that. So, I think parents might change their tune in a couple of months, even if they're not planning on it now. But I think who it hurts the most is all these other streaming sites, because, kids will throw a fit if they can't watch Moana whenever they want to, but they're not going to care. Oh, the new M. Night Shyamalan show's on Apple TV? Well, we got to get that, Oh, The Office got moved to Peacock? Well, we got to get that. So I think it will be very interesting to see what sort of subscription numbers come up. And the people at Disney's, are like, well, look, we never claimed we were going to take away, Netflix subscribers, or anything like that. I think they assume that it will be an add-on. Like, I don't think they thought, oh, people will drop Netflix and get us. I think they just thought, okay, well, they'll have Netflix and then they'll also have Disney Plus. I don't know. I think it's going to be very interesting, because the more of these that come out, like HBO Max is about to drop too. I'm not sure when that comes out, but that's going to have like, obviously all the HBO stuff, Game of Thrones and Sopranos and Sex and the City, but then also have things like The Big Bang Theory exclusively. The only streaming site that will have it is HBO Max. So, that throws a new kind of wrinkle into it. But, Netflix has been so great because it's a one-stop shop for pretty much everything. I mean, there was no network that was like, oh, you won't run our shows, It has a little bit of everything. Now, Hulu, I personally like more because it's got the current seasons of shows. But people that just want to binge on old shows or watch The Office 100 times, Netflix has been perfect in that regard. Or Friends, or, I do watch a lot of their originals, Orange is the New Black, Stranger Things, and, Santa Clarita and stuff like that. So, and then Apple TV Plus pretty much just has to rely on their own original content. As far as I know, they're not going to be gaining any old libraries, and maybe that will come in time, I don't know, but I mean, CBS All Access has the Paramount library, NBC will have the Universal old library, somebody's got to have the Warner, right? I don't know. And then Hulu has Fox, which Disney now owns Fox, and Disney owns Hulu too, so it's like synergy there. So I think it'll be very interesting. But speaking of the M. Night Shyamalan show, I did read something about that. That's going to debut a few weeks after Apple Plus TV goes live, which is November 1st, which is about a week and a half before Disney Plus goes live. But then the Shyamalan show premieres about a week after Disney. It's going to be, I believe, November 22nd. I don't know why they're waiting a few weeks to premiere that. It seems like that's one of their higher profile names, at least as far as the first batch of content goes on Apple Plus TV. So I don't know why they're sort of holding that back. But, I'm always up to sort of watch something that Shyamalan does. I find him quite hit or miss the last 20 years almost. I think he had, 3 real good movies out of the gate, and then it's been very, very hit or miss since then. But we'll see where the TV show goes. I liked the show he was a part of on Fox like two or three summers ago. I can't think of the name of it right now, but it was like a sci-fi show. It lasted 2 seasons. It was based on like a book series or something, but so that was cool. So we'll see what this new thing is about, and I know it takes place in Philly. I know it's a limited series. It's not a movie. But I don't know. I haven't heard anything about like if Apple Plus TV is running their shows weekly or all at once, a la Netflix. Um, because, CBS All Access has sort of stuck to the one a week model. And for the most part, so does Amazon Prime, I think. Um, or at least they did at first. I don't know if they still do. And then Hulu sort of goes back and forth. I think they sort of play with. Actually, I guess they're mostly once a week, because like the Wu-Tang thing that's on right now is once a week. Mindy Project, when that went to Hulu, was still once a week, like when it was on Fox. Um, yeah, a lot of their shows are only once a week. So I haven't heard what Apple Plus TV plans to do. Disney, I know, is doing the dump. They're just gonna 10 episodes in a season. Here it is. You can binge it if you want. So that's sort of, I don't know. I'm not much of a binger, so for me, it doesn't matter. You put one a week up, or if you put them all up, I'll still watch it at my pace, which is, a couple episodes every few weeks by the time I cycle around all my TV shows. But, so that's just a little interesting news, I thought. That statistic was interesting about 3/4 of the Netflix subscribers do not plan on getting Disney Plus, at least at first. So we'll see. And then the last thing I had news-wise, nothing to talk too much about, but there is another new famous face getting a talk show in 2020. They already announced a few weeks ago that Nick Cannon will be getting a daytime talk show, who I sort of have mixed feelings about. He's an okay host. I like him on America's Got Talent. I'm really hooked on this Masked Singer show right now. So I think he's pretty good on that. But I don't know. There's just something about him that's like weird. Like he's just a little off-putting sometimes. I don't know if it's his wacky attire or what. He like does a lot of like mugging for the camera that I don't love. But I do think he's a good host. But is he going to be a good talk show host? Like, is he going to be a good interviewer? I don't know. But so that's been announced already for 2020. But that is just sort of going to be syndicated nationally. But this new one I read about today is the Drew Barrymore show. I love her. She's been in talks for a daytime talk show since 2016. And she has signed with CBS, so they're going to make some time in their daytime schedule. And this will be the first new daytime CBS show in about a decade, maybe even 15 years, since the Talk premiere, that Sharon Osbourne show, that's sort of like The View but on CBS. Because they already have like Let's Make a Deal and Price is Right in the morning. They have a bunch of soap operas still in the afternoon. They're the only channel. I think ABC and NBC have one soap opera each, but CBS I think still has 3 on the air. And then they're going to have, I guess, a free hour for the Drew Barrymore show. But I think that'll be interesting. I think she's very likable. You need a likable host for your show, no doubt about it. But it's interesting that we're sort of returning to the era of more, I mean, I don't know, but I would imagine that the Drew show is going to be a lot like Ellen or Kelly Clarkson, where it's guest heavy, game heavy, just light. And I'm glad that we're sort of getting back to that era of talk shows, because I never really liked the whole, I mean, like Dr. Phil's okay, it's interesting to watch once in a while. But like, the whole Steve Wilkos thing, and obviously Jerry Springer, and my cousin married my cow, whatever. And it's like, it's just so silly, and I know there's an audience for it, but I'm glad to sort of be getting back to this sort of more era of like celebrity guest talk show in the afternoon. Because Oprah did a little of both. I mean, Oprah didn't have like crazy guests, at least, I mean, at first she did, but then she sort of veered into obviously more the Oprah that we know today. But it was like some days it would be a big celebrity guest, some days it would be a topic, but it was never like, I don't know, like I feel like a lot of these shows now are just sort of glorifying like Hicks or just sort of lowest common denominator type people, and I never really got into that. And I don't really love the like informative talk shows either. I guess Oprah sort of fell into that, like informative, like Dr. Oz or something like that. I don't know. I mean, if you're into that, fine. But there's so much information at our fingertips now on the internet. It's like, am I really gonna sit and watch Dr. Oz tell me what goes into a colonoscopy for an hour? Probably not. So anyway, I think the Drew Barrymore show will be of that ilk, of the celebrity, Kelly Clarkson, Ellen, Rosie O'Donnell type variety of show, which I think will be great. She is a very lovable person. She's got this bubbly personality, and she has a lot of Hollywood friends. I mean, she comes from the Hollywood royalty that is the Barrymore family. So I think that could very well be a success. So I would love to see her do well with that. But that's a year away. I'm sure I'll be reviewing that when the time comes. So let's get into our reviews for this week. Like I said, there's 5 shows I'm going to review, and they're sort of all over the map. The first 3, I think, we're really going to hit the hardest, and then the last couple, are probably just a few minutes at a time for reviewing. But first, we're going to talk about Bless the Harts. This is on Sunday nights on Fox between The Simpsons and Family Guy. I don't watch live TV, so I barely know when things are on anymore. But I know Bob's Burgers is on Sundays as well at some point. So I don't know where this falls into the lineup, but it's part of their animation domination block. And it's got a cast of people I really like, a voice cast because it is animated. But it's Kristen Wiig and Maya Rudolph. They sort of play the main two, and then Ike Barinholtz plays the husband. Kumail Nanjiani plays Jesus, who comes out of this Last Supper picture, or painting, I should say, and talks to the Kristen Wiig's character. So essentially, I guess I don't know what the relationship between Kristen Wiig and Maya Rudolph's characters are. I think they're sisters. But anyway, they're definitely a family, and then the daughter is voiced by Jillian Bell, who I love. And these are, I'll use the word hick again. I mean, they're sort of hicky in the South, and poor people basically. They're getting their water shut off in the premiere episode, and what are they gonna how are they gonna fix it? And they're gonna not pay their bills and this and that, and they discover a lot of these. They're supposed to be Beanie Babies, but they're like toys from the '90s that the Maya Rudolph character has been hoarding for 25 years, and now she was saving them for an investment and doesn't want to break them up, and Kristen Wiig says, well, screw that, we're gonna sell these and whatever. So I wanted to like this from the cast and the premise, I guess. I mean, it sounded like it could be sort of King of the Hill-ish, or maybe even Bob's Burgers. I mean, Bob's Burgers, they're not loaded with money. They're very working class. And I like that kind of thing. But then I started seeing the previews, and I thought, well, this probably isn't going to be very good. I don't know how I feel about it. I didn't know anything about the Talking Jesus character. If that was in the preview, I missed it. But so I watched it, and I try to go into things with an open mind. Like I said, I was excited at first when I heard the cast and everything, and then, I was like, well, I don't know what I'm getting into once I saw the previews. But yeah, it turned out my instinct was more correct on the preview part. And it's just not that good. First of all, it's not very funny. The jokes seem to be mostly cheap shots at either dumb people or poor people or hicks or just Southerners in general, or it just seems to be just picking fun. And it's like King of the Hill did it in a certain way, but you always had Peggy as the balance. There doesn't quite yet seem to be anybody to balance it out. Everybody seems like a dumb hick. It's like if Cletus from The Simpsons, finally got that spin-off that they talked about in the Simpsons spin-off showcase 27 years ago or whatever. It just, oof, it's not that good. I can see that there might be potential, and I think I will remember more about this pilot episode than I will about Bob Hart's Abishola, or maybe even Perfect Harmony. Some of the shows I've seen so far. But I see less potential here at the same time. Like, I love Kristen Wiig, but this voice that she's doing for the character seems pretty much like the Target lady on SNL, which makes sense. Target lady was easily amused. I don't think she was necessarily from the South, but she just doesn't do much with the character. The Jesus coming out of the Last Supper poster and sort of giving her advice is a new twist, and I like Kumail Nanjiani. I don't know what his career choices are lately, though, because that Stuber movie was not good. And I don't know. They pitched him, hey, do you want to play Jesus coming out of a painting and giving advice to people? Oh, sure, sign me up. So I don't know. This is one that I'm definitely tentative on watching more episodes of. I would say about half the shows I've seen so far this season for the podcast, I can say, like, yes, I will at least watch that another 2 or 3 times, give it the old college try, even if it's not that good from the start. This one, I don't think the writing is sharp enough to continue, and I don't think I care enough about the characters to continue. But again, I will remember probably the plot to this episode more than certain others that I've seen. But like, they were trying way too hard with the 90s references on the little toys that they were trying to sell, which was kind of lazy and annoying, I thought. The animation's nothing to write home about. The voice work is okay. I think Ike Barinholtz probably, and Maya Rudolph probably do the best job with their characters. I wouldn't have even known that was Ike Barinholtz unless you told me. So, I think he does a good job. I think there may be some potential here in time, but I'm not sure it's worth investing my time in to catch up on that. And this is an interesting one. Like, I don't read reviews necessarily before I do my own reviews. I try to stay away from all of that. I try to stay away from other people's opinions. But once I watch something and form my own opinion, I do usually go on Rotten Tomatoes just to see kind of like where I stack up. Like, if I really hated something, I want to see, like, okay, am I crazy or was this bad? And Bless the Harts has an exceptionally odd Rotten Tomatoes thing, because it's one of those where the audience review and the critic review is very lopsided. The critic reviews for this show are like in the low 80s, like they're really high, and then the audience reviews, I think, was 13%. I think that's a little harsh. I'm definitely somewhere in the middle, but I lean more towards that audience. So to me, I don't know what critics necessarily see in this show that I'm not seeing, or that the other audience people that rate on Rotten Tomatoes see. But it's it's a far cry from King of the Hill, that's for sure. So I guess I will grade this. I'm gonna leave it right down the middle. Actually, I'll leave it a little lower than the middle. I'm gonna give it a C minus. I sort of almost wanted to go lower than that, but like I said, I liked some of the voice work, and I think the plot itself for the premiere is more memorable than some of the other shows I've seen thus far. So I'll give it that. As far as potential, I'm not sure. And I felt the same about Bob's Burgers. Like, I watched Bob's Burgers probably about 4 or 5 years after it had first come on, and it was this big sort of cultural, like, oh my god, Bob's Burgers is so funny. And I watched the first 2, and I just thought, I'm not quite sure how I feel about this. I don't know if I'm in on this yet. And now it's one of my favorite shows. So it can certainly happen that a show can pick up steam and once it finds its footing and stuff. But I'm not sure I want to give Bless the Hearts that much rope in that regard. So I'll leave it with a C minus. So let's move on here to Batwoman. This is on the CW. Now they have started their shows later than everyone else, and I'm not sure if that's an attempt to sort of let the other major networks do their thing, and then, oh, you didn't like their offerings? Okay, well, come over to the CW. We've got all these other shows. So they just started doing their premieres this week. So this is the first one I've seen. I've heard good things about Nancy Drew, so I'll look into that probably for next week's show. But Batwoman is probably their hottest, talked about new show. So I wanted to at least cover that one the week it came out. I have some mixed feelings about the Arrowverse in general, as it's known. All of those shows. I watched, let's see, I don't think I ever watched Arrow, to be honest, but I watched The Flash for about half of the first season. I watched Supergirl for half of the season. It was on CBS. And then I sort of gave up on that before it even went to the CW. And I guess they have other sort of spin-offs of that even. A lot of their shows, I don't even know what they are. So I think some of them are spin-offs of Arrow or DC Comics, and some of them are just their own thing. But Riverdale's the only CW show I really keep up with. But wanted to give Batwoman a chance, as I am trying to watch everything here. It's created and curated for the CW by Greg Berlanti, like all of the Arrowverse shows are. He's sort of the Kevin Feige of the CW DC universe. And so this takes, the classic Batwoman, Kate Kane, who, look, I don't know much about her. I mean, I know sort of the main people in, Batman and Superman and all that kind of stuff. And mostly that's what I know from movies. A little bit from the comic strips way back when, because I'm like a sort of a classic comic strip collector. I collect a lot of those the reprint books and stuff. So I know Wonder Woman and a lot of the main characters from that. I didn't really know what Batwoman's story was. I didn't know what her relationship to Batman is. So this takes place about 3 years after Bruce Wayne has disappeared from Gotham. Nobody knows what happened to him. And so Kate Kane is his cousin, and she's played here by Ruby Rose. And in this pilot episode, basically, she's kind of figuring herself out. She figures out Batman and Bruce Wayne were one and the same. Spoilers. No, but she basically wants to take the reins. And, when she first goes out, news articles, oh my god, Batman is back, because they don't know who Batwoman is. So they sort of get on that whole train, and meanwhile, nope, it's her. It's good old Ruby Rose. So that's basically what happens. I mean, it's a fairly basic origin pilot story for a superhero. And, I think it sort of serves its purpose, especially for a character that a lot of people didn't know. I guess the main thing about Batwoman is that she's a lesbian, and Ruby Rose, of course, is very visible in the LGBTQ community, and so this is sort of being touted as like, oh, the first time, look, as a gay person, it's hard for me to even follow all of this. Is Ruby Rose a lesbian? Is she bi? I don't know. But anyway, so this is the first time, a member of the LGBT community is, being the star of a superhero show kind of thing. So it's like a big deal from that. So that's essentially the show. So here's my review of it. It was not good. It was okay. It was slightly better than Bless the Harts, I suppose. But, first of all, the CW does what the CW does. There's a reason that Riverdale's pretty much the only show I watch on it. I mean, I watch that Penn and Teller magic show that they do every summer, but in terms of like their scripted dramas, Riverdale is the only one, and I watch it because I'm a huge Archie fan from my childhood, and so I love to support Archie stuff, and I did get sucked into the storylines and the characters and stuff. But this has sort of that whole feel that a lot of the other CW Arrowverse shows have, sort of, dark sets and brooding characters, and the acting is a bit over the top, and I mean, I don't know, that's sort of the CW brand, I guess, in general, right? But here the main problem is, I would say, other than some fairly basic and bland writing, is Rose herself. I liked Ruby Rose in a lot of the things I've seen her in. She was on a season of Orange is the New Black. She's been sort of a side character in some action movies in the last 2 years. The John Wick series, and was it the Triple X reboot, or not reboot, but I guess it was a sequel that they did like 4 years ago, whatever. She was in that. She has been in a couple of the Pitch Perfect movies. So, okay, I get it. And, I mean, she's very attractive. Can't deny that. But I don't think that she has the acting chops to be the lead actress, even on a CW show. She just... I understand that the character has certain qualities, and she's maybe a little more understated, but, like, this was just bland, I would say. I mean, the only interesting thing about the character is that she's lesbian, and they remind you, like, every 45 seconds that either she's a woman and she's a superhero, or that she's a lesbian and she's a superhero. So they were, like, beating you over the head with that. The plot was fine. It was, typical, what I would expect out of a superhero origin pilot. It's not really that different from the pilot of The Flash, or the pilot of Supergirl, for that matter. Supergirl had a higher budget because it was on CBS at the time, but you know what I mean. And then Arrow, like I said, I don't think I've ever seen, so... I did watch the pilot of Gotham when that was on Fox. I bailed on that show fairly quickly. Pretty much all of my Batman enthusiast friends were like, yeah, that show sucks. Then I think some of them picked it up again and started watching it and said it got good in the second season, but I'm not going through that again. But I thought the pilot to Gotham was pretty good. This was not as good as that, but look, we've established the character. Okay, fine. But the set pieces were kind of bland. I really didn't like that if Bruce Wayne, this super, super rich dude, hires, like, guards for his manor and stuff, Ruby Rose just, like, walks right in and she's like, hey, everybody, like, here's Batman's password. Like, I thought that was a little bit much. So here's another one where I went on the Rotten Tomatoes afterwards, because, the DC stuff, at least the movies, tend to have a very big imbalance between critics and audience. For the movies, a lot of it is like, critics hate it, audience likes it a lot, sometimes loves it. It's very, very seldom do we get a Wonder Woman, where everybody likes it. But here again, kind of like Bless the Harts, it was skewed the other way. Critics, I think, Rotten Tomatoes has it like in the low 70s, and audience has it at 10%. Which, again, I think is a bit harsh. Look, for me personally, I'll never watch this show again. I watched the pilot so I could review it on the show, but, first of all, I'm not part of the whole Arrowverse thing, so it's sort of pointless for me to glom on now to it. Because when they do their crossover episode in December, I'm not going to know half the people. But I really think Ruby Rose's failing to connect with the character or connect with the audience, I think that's what is going to doom this show. Because everything else is fairly standard CW Arrowverse. So I think if people are into the CW Arrowverse, I think they will like it. I think they'll be on board because they don't mind a lot of the stuff that was the reasons I gave up the Flash and stuff for. However, I don't see Ruby Rose carrying this show. Maybe I'm wrong, but judging by the pilot, no. And then just we get it. She's a lesbian. It's fine. Like you don't need to beat us over the head with it. Like it's cool. I'm glad she's a lesbian. Like I don't know. I don't know how straight people feel about that, but like as a gay person, I'm just like, okay, we get it. Like you don't have to, we got it. She's gay, cool. So I don't know. I didn't really like that part either. So for me personally, it's very low. It's like a like a D plus probably, but I do like to sort of try and grade things how I think it hits for its intended audience as well. And I think if you are into the CW stuff, you will probably like it more than I did. But I think you still won't like it as much as the other shows because of her. I just don't think she brings that much to the table. So I will leave Batwoman with a C, and just leave it at that. It's average to the max, below average in some aspects. The other actors did a good job, though. I can't deny that. I can't say I was ever bored with it. It held my interest from a story perspective, even though it was a basic origin pilot story, but it still held my interest. I didn't have enough investment in the character to continue, I guess. So up next is Evil, and this is on CBS, and I believe it's on Thursday nights after their big comedy lineup, which I talked about the new shows from that last week. And I was excited about this from the start because this is from Robert and Michelle King. I don't know what their deal is. I don't know whether they're husband and wife, sister and brother, cousins, whatever. Just happen to have the same last name, King. I don't know. But they created The Good Wife and then subsequently The Good Fight, which, if you know me and you watch my channel regularly, or if you ever hear when I'm on my buddy Merlin's podcast, I always talk about The Good Fight because I love it. It's one of my shows. And then they also did this show called Brain Dead, which aired, I think, 2 summers ago on CBS. It was just a 1-season show, but Mary Elizabeth Winstead was in that, and we love her. So when I saw that they were sort of creating this project, and it was a little more sci-fi related, which Brain Dead was of the sci-fi or fantasy vein, I was like, okay, cool. I'm on board. Let's give it a go. The basic premise is that there's a forensic psychologist who doesn't really believe in a lot of the stuff. Classic X-Files here. She aligns with a priest, and they investigate supernatural incidents. So it's a little X-Files-y, and I guess she would be sort of the Gillian Anderson of it, the Scully. But they definitely, take some twists with it that are interesting in the pilot. One of which is she starts having these very, very lucid nightmares, night terrors, really, about, the case and about this monster that she keeps seeing. She's played by Katja Herbers, who I don't know, but she's on Westworld, so you may know her because I don't watch Westworld, but I guess she's popular from that. And then some of the other people in the cast we've seen in other things. Asif Manvi, Mike Coulter plays the priest, and he's been in a bunch of stuff. He was on Jessica Jones for Marvel, and he plays Luke Cage. So you Marvel people will definitely know him. I didn't watch Luke Cage or Jessica Jones, but I knew who he was just when I saw him. I was like, oh, okay. And he was, of course, in The Good Wife, so I knew him from that. But I really liked this one. This is certainly for this week the best of the shows. I think the premise, though, maybe a little ripped off from other things we've seen before. Certainly, I already mentioned the X-Files. That can't help but come to mind here. But even just in the first episode, I mean, the storyline had me hooked. I love the chemistry of the two leads. And, the thing that I think the Good Wife excelled at, that The Good Fight now does the same, and Brain Dead for that matter, is this sort of great blending of snarky comedy, or like, witty, maybe not even snarky, but like witty commentary, and comedy, juxtaposed with the main sort of vibe of the show, which, for The Good Wife was drama, for Brain Dead and this show Evil is more of a sci-fi bent, but there's, and X-Files excelled at that. I mean, X-Files was nothing without the chemistry between Mulder and Scully, and sort of that sly wit, and the skepticism meeting the believer. And here we sort of have two non-believers. Like, it's interesting, the two characters that they've paired up, because they're sort of both non-believers, but go into this with, sort of open eyes and thinking, okay, well, let's see where it goes. They're non-believers, but not closed off to anything, and especially the priest, because he's seen a lot of stuff. And so I thought the script was crackling. I think their chemistry is good. Is it the most brand new thing? No. But for a network sci-fi show, does it check enough of the boxes? Absolutely. I will definitely stay with this one. Sci-fi seemed to be my favorite sort of shows this season, because so far the highest network show grade I've given was to Emergence, which is like all sci-fi, and then also the highest grade I've given overall so far is to Undone on Amazon, which is the cool like rotoscope animation show, and that is, it has a very heavy sci-fi lean to it. It's a drama as well, but certainly sci-fi. So, and these are sort of sci-fi in different ways. I would say all three of them are in different ways. Undone is more of like a time travel sort of thing, or maybe more to the point, alternate dimensions. Emergence is more, well, we don't know yet. Maybe aliens. From the pilot episode, we're not sure, but maybe some sort of alien being. And then this is just supernatural, sort of in general. But yeah, these three are probably some of my favorite shows. I enjoy Stumptown a lot too, and there's been some other things, but yeah, this is right up there with like Emergence, Stumptown, and those kind of shows. So I don't want to grade it too high because of my bias towards all things Robert and Michelle King. So I think I'll leave the pilot of Evil with a B+, just because it is a bit on the generic side, just basic premise-wise, but I really liked the episode a lot. I'm going to be watching more of that for sure, so definitely one on the list. Alright, and so next up we have Tiffany Haddish taking over for Kids Say the Darndest Things. This has been, the original premise was sort of a segment within another show, which is Art Linkletter's House Party, or Open House Party or something, from the 50s and 60s. And then there was like a segment at the end of the show that was Kids Say the Darndest Things. And then, of course, in the 90s, it was revived and put into a whole series with Bill Cosby at the helm, and that ran, I think, 2 years. And spawned, a great Simpsons gag where he goes, starts blathering about Pokemon. But so here we revive it again. Everything, 90s is so hot right now. So let's get Tiffany Haddish, who is, arguably one of the hottest, movie comedians out there today. And she does a good job as the host of the show. I really like her. I think in a lot of her movies, when she's not on screen, it's kind of boring, and then she shows up, and it's like, oh my god, this movie's good again. So I'm a fan of hers, and I think she was a great choice to host this. You have to have somebody, and look, I'm not gonna talk about Bill Cosby's creepiness and how he's in jail right now for the rape and everything. But you can't deny that as Cliff Huxtable and as some of his other shows, the guy had charisma. The guy knew how to talk to kids. That's why some of the, especially those early years on Cosby when Keisha Knight Pulliam is so young, and then a little bit later on when Raven Simone comes on the show, she's precocious and young, and Cosby just had this great rapport with children, and Tiffany Haddish, same thing, which is funny because her she's sort of the opposite of Cosby by way of like her comedy is not very clean, her movies she definitely curses, a lot of them are rated R. And just in her stand-up in general, she's not super clean. So it's interesting in that respect, sort of, that they went with somebody. Bill Cosby was squeaky clean, obviously on the show. In real life, maybe not so much, but I think you do need somebody that can talk to kids and works well with kids. And Tiffany Haddish, she seems to have fun doing whatever she's doing. If you saw her hosting Saturday Night Live. She was having a blast just in the monologue, so I think she was a great choice to host. To be honest, this isn't really my kind of show. I mean, I don't think it's one that I will continue to watch. I may check out some funny clips on YouTube every once in a while or something, but it's part of their Sunday night family lineup, which includes the Funniest Home Videos at 7, and then this is on at 8 on ABC. And look, I haven't watched America's Funniest Home Videos probably in 25 years, but it's nice to know that it's still on. It's nice to know that somewhere somebody's sending in a tape of getting hit in the crotch or whatever, and they're going to make funny sound effects when they air it. Here it's, her interviewing kids about funny things and then doing field pieces with the kids as well. What I didn't like about the show is that I actually think it's more of a vehicle for Tiffany Haddish to shine than it is for the kids to shine. I think the Cosby version, I don't remember that well, but I saw a couple episodes back in the day, and, it sort of seemed like he was sort of leaning back and letting the kids do what they do and let the kids be funny. Kind of like the Steve Harvey approach, which it worked more on Bill Cosby than it does on Steve Harvey. I think Steve Harvey is very annoying when he sets somebody up to say something risque and then he can't believe it. Oh, what are you doing? It's like, all right, Steve, like you set them up to say that, so don't pretend. But here she's just letting the kids do what they do, and she definitely ups the fun factor. The first segment, it was 3 kids and 3 little girls. They were all probably, they were young, probably 6 maybe, and she was like asking them who their favorite performers are and whatever, and they, a couple of them really like Taylor Swift, and nobody believed her that she's friends with Taylor Swift, so she's like, oh, I'm going to prove it to you, I'm going to call her right now, and, I'm sure it was sort of a pre-set up bit or whatever, but maybe it wasn't, I don't know, because Taylor didn't answer, but she texted her, although we never saw the text, so, like, it could go either way, but anyway, it was cute. Not really what I look for in a TV show. I don't really look for cute in my shows these days. I like some sort of substance, and this doesn't have a lot of substance. But I think for families, it'll be fun. It'll be great. My favorite part actually was the field piece she did. She had these 3 kids, and they were like pretending to shoot a commercial, and it was a commercial for this product, dessert ketchup, that she apparently is promoting, but really it's just regular ketchup, and she drizzles it all over these desserts, but it's real ketchup, and then she has the kids eat them, and they have to react how they react, and the one kid was like super good actor. He was like all in. He thought this was real commercial. He was like, "Oh, this is great, Tiffany," reading the cue cards, and then the two girls they had on were like, "This is terrible." That was funny to me. So I got a couple chuckles for that. But again, like, this isn't something I would sit and watch all the time. But like America's Funniest Home Videos, like, it's nice to know that there is good family program. Like, if I had kids that were 6 or 8 or whatever, I don't think I would be watching Stumptown with them. I would, or This Is Us, or a lot of the shows that I personally watch. I would want to watch more things with them, like Funniest Home Videos, or The Masked Singer, or The Voice, or Kids Say The Darndest Things. So it's nice to know that there is clean shows out there for kids to watch and families to watch together, and they can laugh. And Tiffany Haddish is very likable and very funny. However, it is a little bit too much about her and not enough about the kids, and not letting the kids kind of steal the show. And I will say I sort of like that she is doing what Bill Cosby did in the 90s version, which is taking a few minutes to show old clips of the Art Linkletter show, and here's what kids were saying in the in the 50s, whatever, and that's always kind of cool. I think it's probably more cool to me than the average person, just because I'm sort of a TV historian, if you will. Not for real, but I kind of am. I love classic TV, and I love studying TV and all that kind of stuff. So it's very interesting to me. I don't know if the normal family will get much out of it, but I thought it was cool that they did that, just like the Cosby version. So I will leave Kids Say the Darndest Things with a B. I think it relies too much on her being the star and not putting it on the kids. But I think for family entertainment, it's definitely fun, and you could certainly do worse. My final review is for a game show. I'm a huge game show fan, and I actually was talking to Merlin about this a few months ago, probably 6 months ago, about maybe doing some kind of spin-off on the channel about old game shows, and not just the famous ones, but really obscure ones. I have an encyclopedia of game shows that goes all the way back. I don't know if it has radio game shows, but it might. But anyway, so we've thought about that, because there's a lot of old game shows have been sort of erased, as was the network standard practices at the time, up through the 70s and 80s. But usually there's at least 1 or 2 episodes you can find on YouTube, that are sort of held at the Museum of or the Library of Congress, whatever. So, or the TV and Film Museum. But I love game shows. So I was excited when I heard Meredith Vieira was coming back to host one. She, of course, was a excellent host on Millionaire. I tried out a couple of times for that show, didn't make the cut. But I've always liked Meredith, so I heard this show, 25 Words or Less, was coming out. It's based on a failed board game, well, not board, because there was no board involved, but word game at home from the 90s, that I'd never actually heard of, which is weird, because I'm a huge board game guy as well. And the basic premise is you have a list of 5 words, and you have 25 words or less to get your teammates to say those words. But you go back and forth, and I'm sort of just saying the premise of the game show. I don't know if this is how the exact board game worked, but you go in back and forth. Oh, well, I can get my team to say these 5 words in 20 words. Oh, well, I only need 15 words. Oh, I only need 12. So they go back and forth like that, and then goes from there. And then on the game show version, basically whichever team gets to play, essentially somebody will say, okay, you think you can do it in that many words, you do it then. And if that team does it, they get the points. If they can't, the other team gets the points. So it goes for 2 rounds like that, and then they have a round where those are the celebrity rounds. So each team has 1 regular person and 2 celebrities. So those first 2 rounds are played with the celebrities on each team, and then the normal people go up for the 3rd round, and They choose which of 3 different words they want to try and get their team to say. Each one is worth a different amount of points. And then at the end, the big finale of the show is you have a minute to get your team to say 10 words, and you have 25 words, I believe, to do that. And if you could do it, you win $10,000. So that's the basic premise. It's fun. It's on Fox stations across the country. I don't get Fox because I don't have cable, and I do have an antenna, but it only goes 25 miles, and the Fox satellite from here, or tower, or whatever, is like 27 miles away, so I don't get Fox, which is why I haven't reviewed this show until now. But being the game show lover that I am, I've been sort of monitoring their YouTube page and hoping like maybe they'll put up full episodes so I can at least review it. And that is exactly what they're doing. They're about 2 weeks behind, so you watch it live, but then if you can't watch it when it's on because you don't have Fox, or maybe it's not carried in your neighborhood or whatever, then you can watch it on the YouTube channel for free and see it. So the ones I watched so far were from the first week, which was like 3 weeks ago. But I'm so glad that they put it up because I'll probably watch it. I'll probably watch all of them. My biggest regret in losing cable is no Game Show Network, because I love game shows, new and old. So I was excited to see Meredith Vieira back. I think she does a good job hosting. You can tell she's really, she's rooting for everybody, but she also has fun with the contestants. At one point she said, she like flat out said she liked the one girl better than, the guy contestant on the other side. And the celebrities have fun with each other. They try to pick people that either sort of know each other, or just have some sort of connection. Like the one episode I saw was Chelsea Handler and Maria, is it Maria McCormick? She played the mom on The Kids Are All Right last year, and she plays Howard Stern's wife in the Private Parts movie. Mary McCormick, that's what it is. So Chelsea Handler and Mary McCormick, they're like best friends. So she had them on opposite teams. I say she as if Meredith Vieira like picked that, but whatever. The producers have them on either side. So there's sort of fun camaraderie. But I think it's a little too simple. I think it's fun to play. But I think the concept is a bit simple, and since all the rounds are basically the same thing, there isn't a lot of variety with it, but, I do enjoy it. I think Meredith probably was better suited to host Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, which I thought look, I love Regis, I do, but I think she was the best host of Millionaire. But anyway, I enjoyed the show. Lisa Kudrow is one of the producers, so she's got her hand in that. And I believe I saw Mary McCormick herself is one of the producers, which explains how she got her good buddy Chelsea Handler to come on. But yeah, I think it's fun. So you can check your local Fox listings for that, or check it out on YouTube at the 25 words or less page. I will leave the game show with a B. So that is the show. A lot of really all over the map reviews this week. Next week, I'll try and catch that Nancy Drew show. There's only a couple more network premieres I haven't seen yet. Almost Family is one of them on Fox, so I will catch that for next week's show. And then I want to get back to doing some of the Netflix and Amazon and Hulu shows that have been premiering in the last 2 weeks that I haven't been able to get to because I'm too busy watching the network shows. So I definitely want to tackle some of those. And then in just a couple of weeks, we've got Apple Plus premiering, and then a few weeks after that is Disney Plus. So tons of reviews coming up for you. And of course, stick with the Conners. I review that every single week. The brand new episode of the Conners that airs Tuesday night, that goes up on my channel by like Wednesday morning or Wednesday early afternoon, depending on when I can watch the episode. And then I'm going to have Merlin back in here for another couple of Frasier Fridays. And then we're going to do more Disney reviews and all that kind of good stuff. So subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Join me next week for another edition of TV News and Reviews. For now, this is Dan, and bye.